Rain's having an internet issue. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome another Feel Good Friday episode where we talk to some pretty incredible people around the world. This week, I am, as you all know, very, very, very excited. We're going to be talking to James Pittar. I met James just before COVID-19 entered our lives and knocked us all off our perch. We appeared on a Ticker TV episode. Ticker TV, it's our online streaming television channel. And that was exciting enough as it was when I was appearing on that. But then I got to meet the other guest who was appearing on it with me. And James was incredible. I felt really, really humbled to be sitting beside him and hearing his story. So a little bit about James. He was diagnosed with, I hope I say this right, I'm a Tasmanian, so pronouncing anything with more than 3 letters can be challenging. Retinitis Pigmentosa.
Yeah, that's correct.
Look at me go. I've been practicing. Diagnosed with an eye condition at 10 years old. And by the time he was 20, James had completely lost his vision. So pretty challenging. And I would love to hear a lot about what that feels like and what somebody goes through when something so significant is taken from them at such a young age. But James has gone on to do some amazing, amazing things. When I asked James for his bio, it was like 1,000,000 miles long, and almost every single year from 1990, James has significantly achieved something almost every single year. Like, it's incredible. So thank you so much for saying yes to this, James. I love putting incredible people in front of our Ambulance Victoria paramedics, and it was an absolute pleasure for you to say yes to this. So thank you very much. I'd love to hear a little bit about you, and perhaps you can tell us, I guess for a start, what was it like? What was it like growing up and at 10 years old finding out that you were about to lose one of your senses?
Thank you for having me, Tiffany, and to the Victorian paramedics. For me, I think it was a very difficult time. I suppose also for me that my dad has been or was an ophthalmologist surgeon for 47 years. So to have a son who developed an eye disease, which he obviously knew a lot about, to start losing their eyesight was going to be difficult for him.
Wow.
It was difficult for me because I enjoyed playing sports such as cricket and rugby and so forth at school, and enjoyed being with my mates. And the primary school I went to had a bush down the back of it. So those things were always going to be very difficult. And so for me, it was a very, very challenging time between the age of 10 and 20 odd to start losing your eyesight, to go through mainstream school. And I was fortunate enough to go to a private school, an independent school called Shaw here in North Sydney. And that certainly gave me, they were great. They gave me lots of opportunities. But for me, I found it very difficult because he was something that, I'd grown up playing with my brother and sister in the backyard and so forth at my parents' home, and now to starting to lose my eyesight. And what was I going to do? What did the future hold? I was born in 1969. So this was in the early 1980s, I suppose. And what did the future hold for me? So there were a lot of challenging moments. I know I wasn't particularly nice to my parents, but I think they were probably knew it because my dad was an ophthalmologist. So I found that a challenging time for me. And I think that is when you know what your friends are like, whether they're going to stick with you throughout whatever the situation is, or if they're not. And I think I've been fortunate enough to have friends go all the way through my life and always support me. So a challenging time, but I think for me it was, you had to think about different things to do and what was going to happen next, and what was the process. Was it going to be you'd lose your eyesight in 10 or 15 years time, or would it just gradually decline over life? And to give retinitis pigmentosa is a disease that you can it's meant to be hereditary. It's not in my family. You're either meant to, it either goes very quickly like it did with me, or it can stay in someone's for themselves for a long, long time, 40, 50, 60 years without going gradually or going at all. So I got what they call the one that went very fast, and that, within 15 years totally lost my eyesight. So very challenging times at school. I think it's not a great time to get it when you're going into high school. But I was able to manage through that and through the school developments and counsellors and so forth, and get through, which went well. But it was challenging, yes.
Yeah, that's amazing. It is. I didn't know that your father was an ophthalmologist, and it's almost uncanny, isn't it?
It certainly is, and I think it was, and my mother was an orthoptist, which is someone who treats people's eyes or tries to make them better. So we had the double whammy in our family, and so it was, for my dad, it must have been a very challenging time, but also it was good because he knew what it meant, and he knew what was going to happen next, and I think that made an enormous difference. I think if you didn't have that support, then you wouldn't know how to sort of deal with that, or how to deal with that at a parent's age. And as you've seen on my bio, I work for the Rainbow Club, or I'm an ambassador for the Rainbow Club, which provides one-on-one swimming tuition for disabled children. And, for those parents who have now got a disabled child and don't know what it means, must be very hard. But obviously for my father, who knew what it was and knew how to deal with it, I think that made a big difference to me.
Yeah. Do you feel like did that change his perspective of his job when that happened to him? Or what got him into doing that job? What was his interest in?
It didn't make a difference to him. He just continued doing his job. His major thing he dealt with was eye squints, and dealing with that. So that was his main thoroughfare with his job. He got involved when he was in his mid to late 20s. He got involved, and he and his brother was also an eye surgeon, goes through the family, and they just got involved after doing university, wanted to do medicine, got involved with eye surgery and with ophthalmology, and as he specialised in eye squints. So my eyesight problems didn't really make a great difference to the work he did. He just obviously knew what it meant and what the ramifications could be or would be. Yes.
Yeah. And I imagine as a 10-year-old and a young teenager, were you angry? Were you sad? What was the overwhelming emotion that you went through the most?
I think the overall emotion for me was just, I think I was an angry person, because I now knew I couldn't probably do the things my mates were going to do. And also, would I, they would go off and do things. Would I be able to do those things? Would they invite me and involve me in those particular things, that they were sighted things? And that was about obviously them being friendly and them remaining as friends, and being able to work out what I could and couldn't do. And I think so first of all, I suppose I was an angry person, both my parents, maybe not to my friends, but I think I just knew that I couldn't do those things that they do. And I mean, I didn't want to go to university after I left school, but that was my own thing. I think that for them, they were always very inclusive of me. And I remember years later, there was a Bucks night, and it was or a Bucks afternoon. Well, James can't do the go-karting, but we still invited him to the function afterwards, and still invited him to the rest of the night's entertainment. And I thought, well, there you go. It showed that, we understood that. And thankfully, I wasn't invited to the paintball part of it, because I'm pleased I got out of that problem. But they invited me to the dinner and the function after, and I thought, well, there you go. They didn't exclude me overall. They realised that, yes, there was no point James turning up to the go-karting or the paintball, but yes, we'll still include him. And I think that showed that they were great friends, and I think it also showed that you had to just manage the situation. I think I was angry, but I think you then go, you've got two choices. You can either go, I'm never going to do anything, be pity of your disability, or you can go, I'm going to go out there and do as much as I can. And every time I want to do something, if I want to do it, you'll always think of a way around it. You'll always think of, if it's, someone says you can't do it, well, why not? Why can't you do that? Obviously, I can't drive a bus or, you know, something like that. But I mean, most things you go, okay, I want to achieve that. And I want to achieve that. How will I do that differently?
Yeah, yeah. And do you think that feeling like that, did you take that anger and direct it into achieving things? Is that a part of what drove you? Because you've like excelled. You have achieved more than fully able-bodied people, and I'm just blown away by your list of achievements. And I just think over a period of time, they have just been constant. You know, from word go, you haven't stopped, and I'm like, there's a driving force there. And what is that?
I think for me, the driving force was that, I suppose I am most times a fairly stubborn person, and it's like when someone says to me in life, you can't do it, then I go, well, no, that's not right. And so for me, I think it was a driving force. There was I want to go out and swim the English Channel, and okay, there's going to be a lot of obstacles, and yes, how do you get to be able to swim next to a boat within 5 meters, and how do you get fed your syrup or your food without being touched? How are you going to do these things? And so it was all about thinking outside the square. But I think my stubbornness and as soon as someone said you can't do this, I would go, well, yes you can. Yes, you can do this. You can, and I'm going out there and do it. And I remember one time my dad's friend had a world map, and he says, James, you should do this swim. And my dad said, don't tell him that, because he'll go out and do it. And he'll go and research, and he'll go and do the thing, you know. And so I think it was, I very much, I'm going to go out there, and if I want to do it, I'm going to go out there and achieve it. And, you know, if I fail, well, okay. But then again, you just go out there and go, that's what I'm going to attempt to do. And I've got to think outside the square and outside the box, because I haven't got my eyesight. How am I going to do this swim, for example? And sometimes there are advantages of not being able to see. You can't see where you are, and you've got to believe in the water, and you don't know how far you are from the finish line, whatever that may be, and you have to accept the trust of your swimming group.
Yeah.
And you know, they may well tell you a few lies along the way, but you know, he doesn't know where he is, so we can tell him what he wants to hear, or what we want him to hear. You know, not what he wants to know. And so there's a few little byplays that come along, but that's called strategy, and that's called, you know, we've got to get him to the finish line no matter how we do this.
Why did you choose the English Channel?
I met Des Renford, and for those who don't know, Des Renford attempted the English Channel 19 times and succeeded 19 times. And I met him one night, and I'd been involved in blind swimming pool competitions up to that point in time. And I went, and I knew I wasn't a sprinter, so I went, I wanted to start doing long distance stuff. And I met him one night at a charity function. I went, that's what I want to do. I want to swim the English Channel. But I also knew what that meant, because I knew that whenever I mentioned it to people, they would say, no, can't be done. Not going to happen, can't be done. So you always had that factor, and you always had that in the back of your mind, that people would always sort of, in a way, laugh, because they go, well, that's not going to happen. You know, for a person to be able to swim for 36 kilometres in open waters, that's just not going to happen. And I remember my mate in America, blind mate, who has climbed the highest peak of every continent in the world, including Mount Everest.
Wow.
And he was asked about failure, and he said, well, the thing is that for him it was about that everyone was expecting him to fail. He said the hardest thing was not climbing a mountain, was that everyone expects him to fail. So when he doesn't get to the top of Mount Everest, they go, well, see, told you couldn't get there. He said that was the hardest thing, and I agree with him. It's all about people's expectations. And I mean, when I swam the English Channel, it was like, oh, he swam the English Channel. and you know, there was this look of, oh, he went out and did what he said he was going to do. And yes, I was lucky on the day with the weather, but that I think is part of it. But I mean, you do a lot of training and a lot of stuff beforehand that gets you to that point where luck comes into play. But it's about, and then of course, then the next expectation was, well, he's from the English Channel, so he can do every swim in the world from now on. And I went from one expectation of, nah, he's going to fail. This is never going to happen. To the next year in 1999 after the English Channel, well, he swum the English Channel. What's his problem? And of course, I think that made it difficult because I went, oh, okay, that your expectation of me is just increased. And now if I do, and if I fail on an easy swim, you're going to say, well, was the English Channel, a flash in the pan? And I think that was the hard thing as well. So, as I said, it was a great thrill and a great challenge, and took a year to train for. And I knew that you needed enormous amount of weather luck on the day to get there. Yeah.
You can't. No one can touch you when you're in the water, right?
Correct.
How do you know where to go?
So what we did was we had in English Channel a loud hailer system. So it was one long blast to your left and two short ones to your right. And I would probably hear that 3 or 4 times in every minute. And I swam for 830 minutes. So you can see that the English Channel swim was not only a physical situation, but it was a mental one for me as well.
Is that sound a trigger for you now?
Well, it's funny because the next year when I did the Manhattan Island Marathon swim and I heard the whistles, we did a whistle system that year because there were kayakers the next year. I'd heard the whistle same time, but the next day after the Manhattan swim was the Puerto Rican Day in New York. They have one every year from different countries, and they blew whistles all day. I went, no, I want to go back to the hotel. Thanks very much. I've had enough of them. I heard them all yesterday. I don't need to hear them again. So we use this loud hailer system, and in the English Channel, you can't touch anyone on the boat. So my group designed a long swimming pool pole device for my feed. So there was the water bottle tied to a rope, an open-ended syringe that had my carbohydrate syrups and gels. And every hour, every half an hour, they'd blow a whistle and lower it into the water. I'd pick up what I want, take it, and then throw it away and then keep on swimming. And that was how I was fed. And, really it was, and the point was you didn't want to lose time doing feeds because A, it's getting cold when it's only 16, 17 degrees, but B, every minute you lose early on may mean the difference between missing or gaining a tide. And that could be another 6 hours swimming. So you're very conscious about the feeds you're doing and also try not to veer, because for me, I probably swim an extra 10 to 15% than anyone else because I'm veering all over the place.
Yeah.
And, it's funny because there was a time with the English swimmer, Alison Streeter, who swam it 44 times. And at one point, you talk about how you can't be touched. Well, there's a story where she was working for a banking organisation in England. She's English. And she had to make a decision for their bank on a particular thing. And she was in the middle of the English Channel swimming. And they threw a mobile phone. She caught it. She said, yep, do that, and threw it back and kept on swimming.
Oh, my God.
And the bank said, okay, we've got the answer we wanted. Yep. So she kept on swimming. So I'm glad she caught the phone and could answer and then throw it back. That was good fun for her. But that's about it as the English Channel. They're the rules you go under. And it was going to be a difficult challenge. And I go back to that thing about the feeds of being a short time and not wasting time. I remember around about the 12-hour mark of the swim, my coach said, right, I want you to sprint the next 600 meters. This is at 12 hours. I'm going, all right, don't know if I can do this, but I'll have a go. And what I didn't know was that if I didn't get past the sandbank that was in front of me within 5 or 10 minutes, the tide would change and I'd have another 6 hours swimming and I'd probably fail.
Oh, wow.
So she knew how critical that was. She didn't tell me that, but she knew how critical it was. And when I got past I sprinted and I did get past the sandbank, then she gave me a feed and I could sense that things had sort of relaxed because there was a bit more, take your time, take the feed, get on with it. And I knew that meant that something must have been critical, because from then on I had, I still had another hour and 50 minutes to swim, but it wasn't 6 hours.
That just literally gave me goosebumps. It must feel amazing to know that you can put that much trust into your team and into people. Bron and Elle have asked a really great question that I love. Sure. Did you find that you felt incredibly vulnerable in the open water?
I always feel, to me, I feel a little bit vulnerable, but for me, I always had my team with me. So I always put my trust in my team, and I always believe what my team tells me. Whether that's correct or not is not a thing I can't control. But I have great trust in my team. I never worry about sharks because I can't see them. Don't worry about them. Can't see them. That's my team's problem, not mine. That's their job, not mine. Mine is to swim. Don't worry about that. That's their problem. Their problem is to feed me, encourage me, and worry about that problem. My problem is to swim.
Now there's a life lesson for us all. That's fantastic. What does swimming mean to you? What does it, like, you've done so much of it. You've done it every year. You've achieved stuff every year. What does it represent?
To me, it represents being out in the ocean is freedom. Because I can be out there on my own. Yes, I need someone out there to be kayaking or on a boat or whatever, blowing whistle. But to me, I love swimming in the ocean because it gives you a different thing every time you swim, whether that's currents or waves, getting stung by blue bottles. It's a different form. And for me, training for swimming in a pool is still an independent thing. I can go down to the pool, obviously when it's not COVID-19, and get in a lane and swim in the lane on my own. There's 2 lane ropes and there's 2 walls, and if I know I count my strokes in a pool, I know, I can get in there and swim with other people and know that, I can do that. I can do that on my own. It's an independence thing. I know when I got involved in rowing a long time ago, that you had to rely upon someone else to be out there actually rowing with you. If they didn't turn up for the morning session, that was the end of your session. Whereas in swimming, I can just go down, I can get in the lanes, count my strokes, do my swim, or in the ocean. I just love in the ocean because it's a different conditions in the salt water, and it's just getting bashed by waves. I just like that sort of, you can relax. You can just go, yeah, I'm out there. This is my ocean, and I mean, obviously in the swim when you're doing something like English Channel, there's a lot more pressure on, but it's still out there. You still know that you're trusting people. You know people are within distance. So it means a lot. It means relaxation. It means independence.
What are the thoughts that keep you going out there when it's not sharks? Says
it's not sharks. For me, I try and think about something else, which is like either lying on a beach in Sydney or being with family, being with friends, and I try and think about that. And I know that, but for me, it's always difficult because I'm listening to a whistle or a loud hailer. I'm concentrating upon my stroke, or getting ready for the next sort of knowing there's a feed coming up or things like that. And sometimes your team is out there to get you psychologically thinking about something else as well. I remember when we did a swim, and my mate said, right, for the next half an hour, I want you to think about something totally different. And at the end of that, I want you to tell me your response. He asked me a question, and I said, right, in half an hour, I want to know what your response is. I don't care what the answer is. They'll tell me that you actually thought about something totally different from swimming for the last half an hour, and I know where you are. And I think that's a really important thing. In the swim in Argentina in the Parana River, because we swam down a river for 60 kilometres, where every kilometre or 500 metres a wheat silo pumped out pollution, my mate would go every time at a feed, are you all right? Because he could see the pollution coming into the water. And at one of the feeds I said, no. He said, I know, yes, here we go. I know I just seen what came out in the river. Yeah. And he gave me a different sort of food and syrup to drink, and that fixed me up. But he was thinking about it because he could see what was going on, and he knew that, and he could see what I was doing. And they also know how well I'm going mentally, because if I start swerving everywhere or not listening to whistles, they know I've lost concentration. So yes.
Yeah. Do you think that it is that not having vision is in a way an advantage in swimming, but maybe even in other areas of life?
It certainly is in swimming, because you're only worrying about going out there and swimming, and you just trust the people, and they so you just go out there and swim. You don't worry about that. And they never tell you sometimes they don't, because of psychology, they don't tell you the right thing anyhow. So I think it is an advantage, because you can't see where you are. I reckon if you're in the English Channel and you can see the White Cliffs of Dover are still there, and I've gone 6 hours and I'm still there, as a sighted person, you might get a bit, you might get frustrated, and that might lead for your performance to go downhill. Yeah. Whereas, my English Channel, I spent 7 hours parallel to the French coastline because of the way the currents are. Now, if I'd been able to see that I hadn't gone anywhere, that would have frustrated me. Whereas for me, I didn't worry. I just kept on swimming, and my group said, "You're going well. Keep going. Don't worry about it." And I think so. So I think in swimming, it's certainly an advantage. I mean, it'd be nice to know at times where you are, and it'd be nice to know when your team's really, like in the Martha's Vineyard swim to Nantucket Island, it gets very shallow, about 3/4 away. And my mate got in to try and, well, he said he was swimming next to me, but I found out actually later that he was actually walking along the bottom and flapping his arms as though he was swimming. So he thought, "Oh, that's good. James knows I'm swimming." And he told me that later. I went, "Well, that's not really good, is it? I'm glad to see you tell me the truth later." But I think in life, I think there are yes and no. I think the advantage I find in life is that you don't look at someone and assume something. And so I'll go and speak to anyone. And there was one time where someone came up to me at the bus shelter as I was going towards work, and we just starting to have a conversation. Now I'm about 6'3", 6'4" tall, and this person was a dwarf, 3'6". But that didn't matter to me. I just had a conversation with the person. I didn't care about that this person was, half my size. That didn't worry to me. To me, it doesn't matter if the person has, a different colour skin. They're just a person, and I think that's an advantage, that you aren't making an assumption about someone. And they say that you should never judge a book by its cover. Well, yes, that's certainly true. And I think, as I said, the advantage is I don't worry about what the person is. It's just about having conversation with them, being with them. Don't care what they look like. That doesn't faze me. That doesn't go into it as a person. It's what they're like. I mean, I suppose I can put in here quickly, as I talked about a book that I wrote, my autobiography, Blind Vision, last year. That's 308 pages about my life. And you can go to www.inspiringbookshop.com if you'd like to purchase it. So that was a lot of fun doing that. But again, it's about, I think there are advantages in not being able to see in general life.
Yeah. Rain's asked a lengthy question, as she does. One of her favourite movies is called The Big Blue. It's about a deep sea diver who becomes one with the ocean. He is part fish. Do you ever feel deeply connected like that, or is swimming giving you a sense of freedom and connecting you more to your other senses?
I don't think I'm connected to the ocean. I think it's more that second part that I enjoy. For me, it gives me that relaxation and independence. Yeah. And I think that it, I just go out there and swim. I don't think I'm part of that ocean. I love being in the ocean, but no.
Yeah. Let's talk about, your swimming's fascinating, but what's also fascinating. So as a young adult, dating life. Like, you got married, you had kids. How does a person do that? You can't see the world that we're living in, and I am fascinated by this. I can't even do it, and I've got full vision.
Well, my mate from school, he came along to me in the early 2000s, and he said to him and his two other mates of mine, he said, "You've got to get into this internet dating. It's magnificent." And I went, "Oh yeah, righty. I don't think I like the sound of this, But and he said, "Oh yeah, I'll help you do a profile or whatever it is, and we'll put it up and get a photo." I'm thinking, "Oh God, here we go." And he was very much a man of, "Yep, this is going to work. This will succeed." And he convinced myself and my two mates. We'd all gone to school together, and the three of us, his three other mates, were very cynical and thought this will not work. And that was, I think, about 2002, and by the end of 2006, the three mates he'd conned into this system were all married. Yeah. and he was still single. So the three, he has got eventually married since then, but the three of us, the cynical ones, sort of succeeded quite well. So for me, I got involved in internet dating. it was always going to be a difficult thing because you were starting with a phoning up the person and knowing who they were and then trying to make them, and that was always difficult. But I luckily found a magnificent woman in Jenny, and as I said, it sort of went from there, and I was just very fortunate. We were both on the dating site, and I always knew to start with it would be interesting because here's someone who's sighted with me who's not. So that was a challenge, but we've been married for 15 and a half years, and then in 2007 we had our daughter Annika, and I think to me I was very nervous about having a child as a blind person. How do you for example, doing things like nappies, not one of my great facets in life. Changing nappies was never my go.
Sorry, Jenny, you're going to have to do this.
Well, no, I think one of the best things that we did was that my wife, when my daughter was 2 years old, every Monday for 5 months went to Queensland to do work, and I would take every Monday off from my work and I would look after our daughter.
Oh, wow.
And that would include things as, nappy changes and all of that. And yes, we did have some good people around the corner who I knew their phone numbers and could come and bail me out if they had to. But, generally I'd be there playing with my daughter and being with my daughter. And I think that was a great thing for our relationship. And it made a thing that I could, knowing how to change nappies and dress my daughter. One time I had to dress my daughter for a birthday party, and my wife wasn't there, and she certainly knew who my daughter was because the differing colours of clothing were brilliant.
I feel like my parents probably dressed me the same.
So we had different coloured socks, and we had everything. We had every combination known to mankind of colours. It was, yes. She arrived and went, okay, yeah, well, you got it here. Yeah, I got it here, yeah.
Oh, that's so beautiful. When you're not swimming, what are you doing?
I'm working in the public service. I've been working in public service for the last 32 years. Yeah. And that's been a very interesting to go from when I first joined not having any computers at all to this day and age where you do most of your day's work from emails and spreadsheets. So it is a very different over 32 years to go through the public service and through, I suppose, any work if you do it for that length of time in that era, to go from the late 1988 through to the present day, and the differing times and what you had to do and how different it is today to have internets and Googles, and if you have a question you just go to Dr. Google. You don't, and for example, when if you've got some health problem, sometimes you go to Dr. Google and it gives you an answer, which is fantastic if you somewhere you can't get much use of a doctor or whatever. And so I remember a couple of years ago, one of the people in our division, who was at the time 25 years of age, so he was born after I'd started in my job, and I said to him, well, when I started, he said, yes, we didn't have computers. And he went silent. Well, what do you mean you didn't have a computer? Well, we just didn't have a computer. And he said, what did you do? I said, well, we just did this. And then he said to me, so what happened next? I said, well, sometimes after a couple of years of being in the office, in the work, I said that, we'd line up for the one computer on the floor, and, you'd line up and get what you wanted, and you made an error, went back to the back of the line again. And I don't think he understood that, didn't comprehend, and that was fine because he's a different era.
Amazing. Ambulance Victoria recently gave us all Braille name badges. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's amazing. Do you find, who inspires you?
Who inspires me? I think like if I had people who were maybe not role models, I suppose some of my mates have inspired me, my wife, my family, so my wife and my daughter, good friends I've had all my life. If it was people outside of my family, people who are inspirational would be people like Nelson Mandela, if you're talking of that sort of, and and I think my grandmother on my mother's side, who represented her country in sport in 2 different sports in her era, and she was she absolutely inspired me, Des Renford.
What were her sports?
She did hockey and lacrosse, and she made junior Wimbledon at tennis.
Oh, nice.
So yes, and she captained the English hockey team in her day. So she was a very good sporting person. I think she was probably a role model when I first, when I was very young, because she was into sport, and I always loved sport from the day. And I think that to me, I think that was, she was really an inspiration. But obviously these days, my family, my wife and my daughter, my immediate family as well, and one of my mates I've been with, who I've been with since the age of 4, he's always really inspirational as well.
Do you have, obviously up until 10 you had vision, so you have an idea of what the world looks like. Do you visualize the world that you move around in? Does that feel clear to you, or do you think or view it differently now?
I think I try and visualize. I think it's good that people have asked me whether would you like to be born blind or what in your situation. I said probably mine, because I got to know and to understand. So if someone did describe something to me, I would sort of know if I'd seen it in those first 10 or so years, I'd know what that was. I think that made a big, certainly an advantage. I do remember when I was doing a documentary for my swim in Manhattan Island, that I was asked in the documentary, which you spent all day, you asked me, what does the colour purple mean to you? I'm thinking, how do I answer that? I don't know. I don't know what he was trying to get to, but we spent all day talking about all these different things, and thankfully I didn't make the documentary. But I mean, it was an interesting question, and I really didn't know how to answer it, because I've seen purple, I've seen colours up to the age of 10, but how would I be represented to that? I wasn't really sure about that, but I know that I think it's been an advantage, because I do visualise what the world is like, and when people do describe things. Sometimes it's good not to see things. Sometimes it's just good to, obviously we're having a difficult year this year around the world, and maybe it's good not to be able to see things that are happening at this point in time.
Do you feel like your senses, did you feel them sharpen up? Like, obviously I feel like your ability to feel, to hear, and I don't know, maybe sense energy. Like, do you feel people's energy?
I certainly feel. I think my hearing has certainly improved. I think you can also feel when people are around you. Like if I'm at my desk at work, and the and I can sense someone's walked up behind me. I can feel that, and I can feel that sort of sense in things. And for me, I have to get to know people's voices. So for me, it's about understanding people, knowing memorizing their voices and knowing who they are. And sometimes that can be you get sort of quite adept at that. And I think my memory is something that certainly has increased over the years, because I've had to use it as a bit like, I think my memory is almost like my eyesight, that it's there, got to be used, and I use it all the time. And memory's a big thing. I don't know about taste and smell. I certainly wouldn't be on MasterChef for the taste test. So I would fail that every single time. So I don't know about them, but certainly the hearing and the memory, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, amazing. Do you have, what's your next goal or challenge? What's next for James?
Well, I set myself a few challenges 5 years ago, and one of them was to write the book, which I did do. Thankfully, it took 5 years, but I got there in the end. And the other one was to try and organise a charity event, which would hopefully go right around the world, to do with swimming, involved with the Fred Hollows Foundation, and that's still an ongoing thing. We were going to do a lot of stuff this year, but obviously that's the last 4 months, we haven't really got very far with that. But we've been spending the last 4 or 5 years trying to organise something, and we'll hopefully get there one year, or one day in 1 year. But it's about trying to get people to swim in pools all around the world and raise money for the Fred Hollows Foundation in a particular month of the year. And it'd just be nice to do something like that, and to raise, to be able to give people their eyesight back. I have done I have raised money for Fred Hollows in the past, in the early 2011 to 2015, and we raised about 100,000. And I think I just, the sense that I've been able to give 4,000 people in developing nations their eyesight back is an enormous thrill. Can't do much for my eyesight, but that's not here nor there. It's about that you give people in these developing countries a chance to be able to see again is remarkable. And this year's been a very difficult year, obviously, for Fred Hollows, because a lot of the operations are done for cataracts, which costs 25 Australian dollars, are done in makeshift tents in, you know, the back blocks of Pakistan and so forth. And of course, they haven't been able to be done this year because of COVID-19. So, you know, hopefully next year we'll get a lot more operations, but we know this year is going to be difficult. But hopefully in a few years we'll get this thing going, and hopefully that's the next sort of challenge. I think you always said, Shannon, I'd love to do a bit more public speaking as well, on a sort of a professional basis. But that's that's a nice project as well. But it's all about there's sort of projects coming up.
That's fantastic. Is there, obviously you've adapted insanely well. Is there everyday things, like what is one everyday thing that is hard, or that is a challenge for you, or a frustration?
I'd love to see what my family looks like, my daughter and my wife. I suppose it's also when you walk into things, that gets a bit frustrating. I think. And,
I do that all the time.
I think that's and I suppose sometimes there are things that you just go, I just got to deal with this. But they're the occasional frustrating things. I think, and then occasionally, I wouldn't say I'm the most technologically brilliant person, so sometimes the frustration with computers and having to rely upon the JAWS system, which is the software that reads all the emails, to work well is always, I think that's something I'd really like to be able to be seeing. Yes.
Yeah, it's remarkable. Like, even, contacting you and sending you an email, like there's so much we take for granted. We move around this world and we take it for granted. We can see, we can hear, we can speak, we can move, and we don't even think about it. And, I emailed you and then I pressed send and I was like, how does this guy read this email? Like, and then I thought, how's he going to get on Zoom? And then and he's speaking to these people and we're all here on the screen, but he's like it's stuff that you just don't think of until you meet someone like you and you're like, wow. And
it's funny, you'll tell people that you're blind and they'll send you a picture on an email. Yeah, that worked really well.
Well, look, I wasn't going to tell you, but I've been nodding and visually responding to encourage you about your speaking. And I'm like, he can't see you, Tiff. You're nodding to nobody.
Well, there was a time at the bus stop where I said to someone, well, where do I go? Where's the, and they just pointed in the direction. And it was funny. I walked on, I thought, okay, I think I'm walking in the right direction. And this lady came and said, would you like some help? Yes, I'm glad to see you worked out the problem, but they didn't. And she just laughed as we walked across the crossing, and I think she just had this sort of smirk thinking, they were useful, weren't they? Not. Yeah.
Oh, it's beautiful. Does anyone else online have any more questions for James? I'm hijacking it all. I'm fascinated. Con Rainey, you've always got questions. Hang on. You're very independent. But couldn't you just get an assistance dog? Couldn't you get an assistance dog? I didn't even think of that.
I do use a white cane, and there are obviously the guide dogs out there. I'm I suppose one of those people who thinks that that a person with a guide dog should be able, because they're so expensive to train, something like 35,000 Australian dollars. I'm one of the people who thinks that you really got to be someone who uses it productively, the guide dog. And I'm someone who just goes to swim in the morning and then goes to work for 8 hours and then goes home. And I'm thinking, I couldn't stand to think that a guide dog would sit under my desk for 7 or 8 hours not doing a great deal. And I think that to me, I'd rather have someone else out there in the community who's going to use it a lot more than I would. So I use the white cane, and I think that seems to be quite good, except for when you're walking in Sydney when there's not COVID-19 and people are on their phones, looking at their phones and walking. Yes, that's probably one of my most frustrating things. If we go back to your question before, is walking and people who just are walking and are looking at their phones and have no idea. And that's a frustration.
When you travel, to Sydney, do you travel alone? Do you travel to new cities alone? And if you do, how do you get around?
Well, I before I met my wife, I'd travel a lot on these to doing these swims. I'd travel sometimes on my own, and you just get assistance on the plane, assistance through the gates at the airport, and then you get to then you get a cab to wherever, and I'd go out. I always felt confident. Certainly in America, I always felt confident of what I was doing. I'd go off and do things on my own. I always felt fairly confident about what I was doing, and yeah, I think it was. I remember when I arrived in San Francisco after a situation where I had to spend another night in another city because the airplanes didn't work particularly well, and there was also a lightning storm. And I've arrived in San Francisco a day later than I wanted to, and I'm sitting there knowing I booked myself on a tour, which was a tour where they were doing commentary, and I only had about an hour. And the bloke who helped me into the room, who owned the where we're staying and the hotel, he said, "Well, anything I can do for you in this next hour? Oh yeah, can you go out and buy me a disposable camera? Here's my money." And there was this sort of, all right, I could sense him thinking, what's the blind person want a disposable camera for? And he came back and gave me the camera, and that was fine. And I just went, well, I just got everyone else to take photos for me. And then the problem was, you get home and my mum would say, well, what's that? I go, well, I don't know where that was. And so I don't think that was, that was in the days when you had disposable cameras. Obviously, this is back in 2002 or something, where mobile phones weren't all that great. But I mean, yeah, it was certainly interesting. But for me, I just think I just try and remain confident. I always ask people where to go or where a place is. I've never had a problem with that. I've always believed that you go out there and ask them, and they're always willing to help. And I found in America, because you're from Australia and from Sydney, Australia, they'll always come out and help you. I've never found a problem with that. And I
really love how you speak about that, and I really love how, I think that it's forcing you to have this trust in people and the ability to connect and reach out. And I think that's beautiful, because there's a lot of us that don't do that. And we have our walls up and we're very independent, and we often push people away. So when you speak of trusting people, I just think it's beautiful. It gives me goosebumps.
Well, it's a trust in and knowing where you are and what the situation is, and knowing that you're just trusting these people. And I just go up and ask them, where do I go? They're always helpful.
Yeah. Luda's asked, are you ever in a rush to get somewhere? And if so, how do you deal with the stress of getting from A to B swiftly?
Not very good. I have to say that's probably one of I do get frustrated. And if there's a time pressure, I'm not very good at time. And that I find that if I start rushing with my white cane, I make a lot more errors. And of course, when you're dealing with the Sydney city and you're dealing with people on their phones and so forth, you can't afford to be doing that. And it's just, that's fun. You can't afford to be doing that. So for me, that is a difficult thing. If I can go through my normal procedures and know things are fine, then that's all right, and can just go along well with what I'm doing and knowing what I'm doing. For me, the other thing I find difficult is, as the week gets on, you get closer towards Friday, you start dropping concentration, and that can be interesting when you're walking and you're just not in the zone, and there are people around you, and you're obviously crossing roads and so forth. And of course, we've got a new tram system, which Victoria's always had, but we got a new tram system recently. And just getting orientation training from people like guide dogs makes a difference, and knowing where and when to get off. Yeah, absolutely.
It's amazing. We'll wrap up fairly soon. It's 5 p.m. If anyone's got any burning questions, John has commented that it doesn't surprise him. You've got great friends for life. Good blokes attract good people.
Thank you.
Rain, your achievements are absolutely amazing. It's sheer resilience and determination. I could never swim long distances in the ocean. I find it scary. I would be anxious. Such an inspiration to me. I would love a swimming competition within the ambulance. Vic, look out. Boom. When Chef, yes. That's fantastic.
I'll leave that to you guys.
Inspired with the James Pittar challenge. I love it. If there was one take home that people hear you speak, what do you want them to take away?
I'd like to take away that you have many opportunities in life and to always take your opportunities. I think that sometimes you get something, if you get the opportunity, take it, use it, and do it. And never go away and think, oh, but if I'd done that, I could have done that. Well, it should be get the opportunity and go out there and make it happen. And I think that's a really important thing. And I took an opportunity in 2013 to swim the Bering Strait with 65 other people who I'd never met in my life before, and to arrive in a place like Russia on my own, and to meet with people I'd never known in my life, never swum with. But the opportunity that came from that, and to swim with these guys without wetsuits in the Bering Strait for 8 days, and the friendship that has come from that. One opportunity that I said yes, only had 6 weeks between where I said yes and when I arrived in Russia. Couldn't train for an event because it was too hot in Sydney. And that's 7 years ago. And to think that an opportunity that I took has given friendship with people all around the world. And it really was an expedition in its own rights. And I think if I'd said no, I'd be thinking this day, why didn't I do that? I was lucky enough that the 2 previous years I tried to swim and had failed and I wasn't involved. But at the 11th of the 11th hour, I arrived as the last swimmer to make the last continent. And by luck of the draw, it succeeded when I was involved. And that was an opportunity that I think that I took. And I always remember my wife said, go and do it, we'll back you. And I did do that. I took their advice, and I think it was a great thing to do. And I think that's about opportunities. If you get an opportunity, try and make it work, because I think you get few opportunities in this world. And I've been fortunate enough to have had a lot of opportunities and to take in most of them have succeeded at times. Sometimes they haven't, but that you learn from that as well. And yeah, I said also learn from your errors and your mistakes. It's about how the paramedics perform all around Australia and Victoria, and what it's been like in the last 4 months. We've obviously seen this last week the brilliance of what happened in Mount Disappointment, and that to be able to find a child with a disability who couldn't verbalise, and to find him after 2 days, and to reunite that with his mother is magnificent. And I think that shows what the paramedics and people do all around this country that we probably take for granted sometimes, because they turn up and do their job even in these last 4 months. So I think that's the thing. Yes.
They're amazing. Thank you so much, James. I have had a series of goosebumps several times throughout hearing you speak. You are so passionate. You are so inspiring. You have exceeded my expectations speaking to you here. And I can't thank you enough for, giving us your time.
That's fine. Thank you very much for having me. And thank you for all of you guys being in the Zoom. As I said, for a lot of us, Zoom has been a thing for the last 4 months, I suppose, getting used to that. So yes.
Learning curve.
Yes, exactly.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
There'll be a lot of people watching this after we post it across the Paramedics Network. Over and out. Keep doing amazing things, and I'm sure we'll see you flying around the speakers circuit soon.
Yeah, and if people want me to come and speak again, that's fine. Tiffany's got my information. Absolutely.
Amazing. Definitely. And I'll definitely make that available to everybody. Buy the book. We love a good... Oh, Rain's reading the book. Yay, Rain. All right. Good work. All right. I'm going to switch off the recording now.
Yep.
Free to stay for a banter.